Today we will take a look at Crane M2, the latest gimbal from Zhiyun designed for various devices up to 720 grams. Zhiyun advertises the M2 as an all-in-one gimbal, meaning that you can use it for your smartphone, action camera and mirrorless camera. In this video we will take a look at the performance of the M2 with various devices, at the feature set, and I will try to explain how you can use this device for your filmmaking. I have tested it mainly with new Canon G7X Mark III and GoPro Hero Black, but I've also tried it with different devices. The M2 is basically as big as an average smartphone gimbal, but it can work with much larger and heavier devices. It weighs about 500 grams, so it is relatively light. The upper part, including the arm, is metal of course, the handle is made of plastics, but it feels pretty solid overall. It can also fit in my PGY-Tech gimbal carrying case, so it is very portable. It comes in hard foam case, which is good for shipping and storage, but it is quite big, so I don't use it for traveling. Besides the gimbal, you will get a table tripod, mounting plate, 1/4 inch thumb screw, smartphone holder, a wrist strap and USB-C cable for charging. The first standout feature of this gimbal that I really like is the locking system. There is standard lock on the pen axis, and you can lock the other two axes by folding the roll axis and tilt axis over the pen motor. Then you can lock the roll axis and also the tilt axis using the pin. The position of rolled axis can be kind of marked by this small lever, so there is no need to rebalance the gimbal every time. The balancing process is pretty easy. All of the axes are easy to move, so I had no issues there. M2 has a quick release plate, so you can take the camera off the gimbal and put it back without rebalancing. The balancing is pretty easy with any type of compatible device, including the point and shoot cameras, action cameras and smartphones. So how about the smoothness? Well, this is pretty small and light gimbal, so it wouldn't be reasonable to expect Moza Air 2 performance, but for what it is, the smoothness is pretty good. With these lighter setups, I always recommend combining gimbal with some kind of internal stabilization. I was able to get very stable footage from Canon G7X Mark III, which has pretty good optical stabilization by itself. Static shots are completely steady, the panning and other types of camera movement are very steady as well. Just like every other 3-axis gimbal, it doesn't smooth out walking, so that depends more on your skills. Heavier gimbals are also more stable while walking, but for the size and the weight, the M2 actually performs really well, so overall I can say that I am happy with the smoothness in combination with Canon G7X Mark III. I can basically say the same about the M2 in combination with GoPro Hero 7 Black and DJI Osmo Action. These have great electronic image stabilization, which reduces the shaking and jitter very well in combination with ultra-wide lens. The gimbal can eliminate larger movement, it can even out the panning, keep the horizon leveled and so on. The footage from this combination is super smooth, it looks very good in my opinion, and I think that it is slightly smoother than with other action camera gimbals that I have tested so far. So yes, it still makes sense to get gimbal for Hero 7 or Osmo Action, not just because of the smoothness, but mainly because of the added functionality. I have also used it with Samsung Galaxy S9, again, I think that it was slightly smoother than smartphone gimbals that I have tested so far. I've used it in combination with optical image stabilization and Filmic Pro. S9 has 26mm lens, so it is not as smooth as ultra-wide footage from Hero 7, but I am still very happy about the performance. Importantly, it is possible to set all of the motor parameters such as the follow speed and the dead zone in the app, so you can adjust those according to your preferences. Also make sure to choose the right payload setting. So overall, it is indeed 3-in-1 gimbal, the performance is good for the size, it is great for vlogging and B-roll footage, just don't expect it to replace the Air 2 or Ronin S with full frame camera. The handling and controls are similar to Weebill Lab. On the front side we have the shutter, mode button and the joystick. Joystick lets you move the camera on the gimbal of course, it is pretty good and you can set the responsiveness in the menu. The on-off switch and menu button is located on the right side and the zoom toggle on the left side. On the back side we have a trigger. When you press it or hold it down, it engages tilt follow mode, double press resets the gimbal, and triple press rotates the gimbal into selfie mode. Crane M2 has a small but useful screen that shows you the mode that you are using, battery life, and the connection status to both smartphone app and the camera. The grip is very well shaped on the M2. It is comfortable to use, as I have said it is very light, so you can use it for a long time even if you are not the strongest person out there. Included table tripod is also very high quality, it works well, and that is all that I have to say about the table tripod. There are two 1/4-inch mounts on this gimbal. One is on the bottom side, so I use that one for included mini tripod. The second one is on the left side, there is also a rosette around it, and it can be used for a microphone or as a smartphone holder. You have 6 modes on this gimbal. The first one is pan follow, where the gimbal follows your movement in horizontal axis. Tilt follow mode can be activated by pressing or holding the trigger button, and it follows your horizontal movements and tilting of the gimbal. In locking mode, it will just keep the camera pointed in one direction. In POV mode, it follows all axes, so panning, tilting and rolling. Go mode is basically a sports mode where the gimbal follows movements faster. Vortex mode for vertigo effect is also available. You can connect most cameras to the gimbal using the Wi-Fi. It worked perfectly with Canon G7X Mark III and GoPro. It should also work with most Sony and Panasonic cameras. The connection has to be set up using the app for the first time, but it connects automatically after the initial setup. Unfortunately, the zoom toggle doesn't work on G7X III, so I could only start and stop recording on both G7X III and the GoPro. The ZY Play app fortunately works very well with the M2. The connection is fast and very reliable. It only uses Bluetooth for most functions. There is basic functionality such as the remote control, parameter settings, motion lapses and so on. If you use the gimbal with a smartphone, you can switch to smartphone camera mode, which lets you capture the video in ZY Play app and use record button and zoom toggle on the gimbal. The functionality of this app with M2 is pretty basic. It can shoot 4K 30p video, but there is no active tracking, so I use Filmic Pro instead. The battery life on the M2 is rated up to 8 hours, which probably depends on the weight of the camera that you are using it with. The battery drains pretty quickly, so I don't think that 7 hours is realistic. Something like 4 hours is closer to reality, which is still a good result. It can also charge the camera through USB, but according to the specs, the battery capacity is only 1100 mAh, so I probably wouldn't use that feature. Cable for charging the camera is also not included. To sum up, Zhiyun Crane M2 is definitely an interesting and versatile gimbal. Probably the most innovative feature on this gimbal is that axis locking system. I like that a lot. It is also 3-in-1 package, so it can replace a smartphone gimbal, action camera gimbal, and a gimbal for compact cameras. The performance is pretty good for the size. You can get very smooth footage using the M2, especially when you combine it with stabilization in camera. It is very light, and the 720 grams payload capacity means that it won't replace a larger camera gimbal, but I will test it with Sony a6400 soon, so stay tuned for that. So far, I like it for the G7X Mark III and the GoPro. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching, I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.